Welcome to our new episode of Speak Revenue. Remember, revenue is not a goal, it's a result. But the result of what? In this show, we turn our eyes from the output towards the inputs. We speak to sales leaders and entrepreneurs about their journeys. Join us on our quest to uncover and learn the root causes of success. Let's unpack what works for them and what didn't. Today with our guest, Umair Ahmed. Welcome, Umair. Thanks for being in the show. Thank you for taking the time.
Great to be on, Thomas. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here. So let us know, who are you? What do you do? Why are you so successful?
Absolutely. My name is Umair. I'm a seasoned co-founder and revenue leader based in Toronto, Canada. I've been in the B2B tech space for the last 8 years, worked for a number of major tech startups in different segments, prop tech, fintech, restaurant tech, you name it. Really become an expert in developing go-to-market strategies and scaling world-class sales teams. Currently, I'm the co-founder and head of sales at Percy, which is a restaurant tech startup based here in Toronto.
Awesome. So it would be great to know, what is your goal for this year? What about next year? Just to get a big picture.
Absolutely. So perhaps I'll tell you a little bit more about Percy, and then I can tell you a little bit about our goals. So
Good.
Percy is a company I co-founded about a year and a half ago, along with Matthew Corin, who was previously running and had founded the 400 unit chain Freshie. And one of the challenges we saw during COVID was that there was a pretty significant labor shortage that restaurant owners are experiencing. So they could find people sometimes, but retaining talent was very, very challenging. And as Thomas, as you know, during the time of the lockdown, pretty much everyone was doing everything virtually and remotely. We were working over Zoom. We were having therapy sessions, weddings, funerals over Zoom, you name it. And the question that arose was, why can't we actually have, cashiers that work remotely as well, that can help alleviate some of the labor shortages? So we actually developed the world's first virtual cashier, where in the restaurant, customers would face a tablet screen, interact with the cashier. They'll be able to take their order in real time, punch the order into the POS system, and send that order directly to the back kitchen. And what we realized was that this was a great way to alleviate some of those challenges restaurant owners are facing. In terms of goals, we are a fairly new startup. We're building the business from the ground up, and we're still very, very scrappy and mindful of resources and how we allocate capital. And the goal we have set for this year is $1.5 million in ARR.
All right. Sounds like a great idea. I haven't heard about anything similar before. Could be pretty disruptive, right?
It is.
In this business area.
Absolutely. I don't think there's another company that's quite doing what Percy is, and disruptive is exactly what the technology is doing. I think, the idea is we're not trying to replace humans. We're not trying to automate humans out of jobs. What we're really trying to do is solve problems for small business owners, the franchisee that has 2 to 4, maybe 5 locations, and they're having a really, really tough time right now keeping their stores open, whatever their hours of operations might be. So if we can help with the front of house challenge vis-a-vis this virtual cashier solution, it goes a long way in helping the economy and keeping our favorite restaurants open.
Great. What about next year? Any specific goals yet?
So based on what we've seen this year so far, it's been a tough economic environment. As I'm sure you know, globally, we're seeing pretty significant changes in interest rates, and that's affecting the economy, and that ultimately affects consumers and their consumer spending habits. So less and less people are necessarily interested in spending a lot of money, but we see in restaurants, at least, that hasn't changed so much. So we're still very optimistic about our growth. And we think that there's a lot more restaurants and different chains that can benefit from Percy. So we're actually going to be doubling our revenue goals next year. And that's going to be facilitated by team growth and also really focusing on the enterprise segment.
Okay. So you're really focusing on restaurants
So
or also other business areas?
it's a good question. So We started off with the restaurant space simply because a lot of our founders have a restaurant background. So as I mentioned, Matthew Corin, who founded Freshie, has been running
Yeah.
Freshie for the last 16, 18 years. So this is a space we know really, really well, and we're subject matter experts. But what's interesting is now that we've been out for about almost 2 years, we get a lot of unsolicited inbound demand from other businesses that are also experiencing labor challenges. So we've had health clinics reach out saying, hey, we need a front desk receptionist. We've had one for 20 years. She just quit. Can we use Percy? We've had interest from
Okay.
airports, hotels. So there's different segments and verticals that Percy can expand to. And we are currently testing that out. So there's a health clinic here in Toronto that provides chiropractic and massage services that actually uses Percy as their front desk receptionist. So we're still testing that out, still very early stages, but we're excited about that potential as well.
Okay. Nice. Sounds like a great potential there.
Absolutely.
Although it's early stage company, when has Percy been founded?
So officially we were founded about, we were in stealth mode for about a year. So I would
Okay.
say 2020, but we only came out of stealth mode about summer of last year. Started publicly talking about Percy and doing some advertising online through different channels. So still a fairly young company. We're still seed stage. We have not, raised the Series A. As I mentioned earlier, trying to be very scrappy and mindful of resource and capital allocation, especially in a funding environment as tight as we are in right now.
Sure. Yeah. Still, you probably already have some kind of sales process.
Yes.
Could you step me through it from lead generation over closing to upsell?
Absolutely. So we have a completely outbound sales model. We don't invest any capital in marketing, Google ads, none of that. I mean, sometimes we have some
Okay.
organic
Mhm.
inbound leads that come in because of our
Okay.
publicity or people word of mouth. We do have a partner referral system that we just established a couple of months ago where existing customers will refer, their peers or folks in their network. But as far as the sales process is concerned, it's still very outbound driven. And the way we kind of segment our customers is in the size of their chains. So restaurants, some of the biggest chains out there have thousands and thousands of locations. You have some that have maybe, in the 5 to 10 range. And then obviously you have a kind of the ma and pa type of restaurants that only have one location. We find that our sweet spot is kind of that middle ground where it's a small, 2 to 10 unit chain, especially located in North America. So the way we operate our sales process is we first figure out what type of restaurants we want to target. We use resources like Apollo, LinkedIn Sales Navigator to do some research on these restaurants and really identify who the key stakeholder is. And typically with the segmentation, that is the CEO or founder of that restaurant chain will then reach out to them and put them in an automated sequence in tools like Outreach or Apollo.io or even in a HubSpot that will consist of multiple outreach steps like email, LinkedIn, phone call, sometimes visiting them in person if we can. And once they're interested and
Okay.
engaged, we'll have a quick call with them, run them through our process, our vision, the product, and send over a proposal. And should they accept the proposal, we actually then move towards implementation and onboarding. Now, in terms of our upsell and account management process, the idea is to get our customers to use Percy for longer hours and in more locations. So typically a customer will start on in a pilot. They might test one or two of their locations for 20 hours a week. Once they've used the product for 30 days and have found success, we'll review our customer success metrics, such as upsell, customer satisfaction, etc. And then based on that, we'll make a recommendation that, in fact, you have a peak period during lunch, and then you have a rush during dinner. And for that reason, we recommend using Percy for 40 hours a week. And then based on the success, expanding to other locations.
Great. Sounds like you really figured out how to address your target persona in the best way and using also some automation to be as efficient as possible, right?
Efficiency is the name of the game, but I'll tell you what, it's a process, it's a journey. You don't get it right immediately.
Mm.
There's a lot of testing, reiteration, leaning into the data and figuring out what works. And it took us a little while to get there, but I think we found process that is working for now.
That's interesting. So talking about what, yeah, or talking about experimenting
Yes.
and what works as well. What have you tried that did not work?
So initially, the hypothesis that we had was we should follow the model that companies like Uber used when they were expanding their Uber Eats division here in Canada. And the way they work was they would go to restaurants or franchisees and get them on board at a bunch of locations. And then they could go to the enterprise or corporate or franchisor level and say, hey, we have 15, 20, 30 of your franchisees using our technology. Let's develop a more meaningful relationship at that enterprise level. Now we tried that. So we would go directly to the franchisee. We would tell them about Percy. They would say, it's amazing. This is going to save me money. It's going to save me time. It's going to help me solve some of these labor problems. But this technology cannot be used without the permission of the franchisor. So
Mhm.
for example, if I went to a McDonald's franchisee, they would say, you need to get permission from McDonald's corporate. We don't have the authority to just use it. So that model didn't work. And we quickly learned that we actually have to switch it. And instead of going bottom up, going top down, where we actually have to start establishing relationships at the franchisor level and almost getting what we call a license to hunt. So if the franchisor says, we love the idea, you have our permission, but we're not going to mandate it to all the restaurant or locations. You have to go and sell this to every franchisee. We would effectively get this
Okay.
license to hunt and go franchisee by franchisee. So that was one of the first learnings in our development of our sales process.
How did you realize, and when did you realize it's not working?
So what we like to do is be very data driven and methodical in our approach. So one of the very first things we did was set up a robust cadence in HubSpot, which is the CRM that we use. And we were closely tracking the sales cycle length and the different stages. Where would deals get stuck? Make very detailed notes from every conversation. And within the first 2 months, we
Okay.
started looking at the data and realizing we're not closing as many deals as we anticipated. So we started looking at the indicators to identify what's happening. And what we realized was time and time again, the franchisees were telling that, hey, I would love to sign up. This is a great product, but you need to get permission. So I think it was month 2 that I made the decision that this isn't going to work. We've had enough conversations to realize there's a pattern here, and we need to revisit the sales strategy and try a different approach.
So it seems like it was really quick, not a long time until you realized. How much time did it take you to react and change the sales strategy?
So one of my pillars, operational pillars, Thomas, is speed. I learned this in my previous
Mhm.
role at Clearbank, now known as Clearco, where moving fast is really important. The analogy that I hear a lot of great sales leaders say is that building a sales organization is a lot like building and flying the rocket ship at the exact same time. So you have to execute and you have to work on the business, but at the same time, you cannot get too stuck in process or strategies or theories. You have to be flexible and malleable and shift based on business needs. So within month 2, I realized that this isn't working. And very quickly we adapted. And over the weekend, I went into a brainstorming session with my co-founders and we decided to pivot the sales process a little bit. So we adjusted, the leads we were generating, our pipeline, our approach. Obviously, we kind of went from almost an SMB sales cycle to a mid-market slash enterprise, which is a different ball game altogether. So all in
Yeah.
all, I would say it took us 3 months to completely repivot, realign, and start pushing forward on a new sales front.
What effects did it have on your team members? How did you manage to keep up the team efficiency during that time?
So there's always a period when you're doing any type of change management that there might be some inefficiencies because you're going through a change. It disrupts the
Yeah.
routine or disrupts the process. But we're lucky in 2 ways. Number one, we have an amazing team that is very adaptable, likes to move fast, and really operates in that startup model of, moving fast and breaking things.
Good.
And a part of that has also just been kind of the type of people that we've hired are used to change, are used to ambiguity, a bit of vagueness. Because again, as we talked about earlier, we're experimenting, we're trying to figure out what works and doubling down on what works and then getting rid of what doesn't work. And that requires a certain mindset, a certain philosophy, an operating framework that is at the core of our business. So it was pretty impressive to see that it wasn't very disruptive, that the team was ready to take on that challenge and we moved very quickly. So that's something, I'm proud of. And I think we did really, really well early on.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, that's very important. But what's the framework? What's the operating framework? Can you elaborate on this a little bit?
So I think it comes down to having, first of all, the right core principles. I'm a big fan of Ray Dalio. I've read his book Principles many, many times, where he goes into his life principles and work principles. And really, the essence is by having a set of principles that guide you, can allow you to establish a framework to achieve success. And for us, we as founders, sat together in a room very early on for a couple hours and really figured out how is it that we work? That's really, really
Okay.
important. And number one for us was the approach of radical candor. So that's just the way we communicate. We don't hold things back. Obviously, we're respectful of one another. We're kind and compassionate, but we're very open and transparent when it comes to feedback, sharing ideas. And that allows us to create an environment where the best ideas win. And the second belief is that, who in that is the most believable person, as Ray Dalio would say. So when it came to sales and revenue on the team, I was kind of the subject matter expert. So I had the most believability as it relates to how we should run our sales process and how we should optimize it. And I had a lot of confidence and trust from my co-founders to basically take it through and run the course. But when it comes to success or marketing or finance, we have other great leaders in place. So really giving people autonomy and ownership has been a key part of our operational framework. So really it comes down to those principles that has really helped us move fast and succeed in this short 1.5 years that we've been doing this.
Sounds impressive. So you developed your own framework individually with inspirations of Ray Dalio.
Exactly, exactly. So I can't take credit that we developed this. I think it really comes from experience. There's 5 of us in the core co-founding team, and we have a wealth of experience from different companies, different segments, different verticals. And we're really taking the best of the best in terms of what we've learned over those years collectively and brought that to the table and put that into the DNA and the structure of the company. Of course, we're imperfect. All make mistakes. We all fail. That's a big part of sales. That's a big part of, running a startup. That doesn't matter. I think we're very comfortable making mistakes, but what matters is quickly realizing that, letting your ego out the door, and doing what is best for the customer, best for the team, best for the business.
Great. So you've already mentioned some tools talking about your sales processes. Is there anything you would like to add, especially when it comes to monitoring and finding out if everything is on track or if something is going wrong in the team achieving your goals?
Yeah. So I'm a nerd and a geek when it comes to sales tools. There are so many out there, really
Yeah.
amazing ones. And I've worked for a number of organizations where we had a massive tech stack because we had such a big budget. We could use whatever tool we wanted. And then I've also worked for companies such as my own right now, where we don't have a ton of capital. So we have to be really sensible about where we spend money. And we have to ask
Yeah.
ourselves twice or thrice, do we really, really need this? If money was no object, I could list you 100 tools that I would love to use and give my team access to. But right now, being scrappy, being mindful of capital allocation, we have a pretty minimal tech stack. So our CRM is HubSpot. Eventually, we'll transition to Salesforce as our needs evolve. We use Apollo.io for lead generation slash lead enrichment, so identifying contact information. We use LinkedIn Sales Navigator also for lead generation, doing a little bit of research. We have AirCall as our dialer, so making calls to our customers. We use Zoom usually for our demos. That's pretty sufficient. We have Canva to help us create presentations and sales materials. We use the free account. The one that I'm thinking about using that I think in my past roles I found a lot of success with is Gong. So to be able to record calls, both demos and sales development calls, really helps from a coaching standpoint. You can really identify
Yeah.
where do you lose the customer, where do you engage the customer, what are those keywords or the lack thereof that is affecting or driving the success. from a coaching perspective, I think that's an incredibly powerful tool. Now it's been coupled with AI to make it even stronger. So that's something that I'm interested in adopting that we haven't yet. But that's it for now. I think as time progresses, we build the sales enablement function, we can expand that tech stack significantly.
Yes, thanks. That's pretty comprehensive. Of course, there are so many tools. It's hard to say when is the right time to add the next one, and when does the next tool provide the most value,
Exactly.
and how to individualize. You use it individually in the best way. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Are there some lessons you learned? Maybe 3 lessons you learned you would like to share with the audience
Great question.
in your career.
Yeah. So from a career perspective, the most important lesson I would say that I've learned is you need to surround yourself with a network of good people. I got to where I am today simply because I was supported and guided and mentored by other leaders. And I can, name a handful that I talk to on a daily or weekly basis that have been really guiding my career and helping me make those strategic decisions, whether at the level of promotions or career growth, or even in my role, trying to identify how I should be growing and scaling my team. So really surround yourself with a great network, always network, go out to events, join communities. That's incredibly powerful. The second for sales leaders, I think it's really important to get hiring right. I think you need to have a framework for hiring and identify what do you look for when you're hiring, whether a BDR or an AE or sales manager or sales director, and use those principles, because ultimately, if you get hiring wrong, a couple of things can happen. Number one, you can destroy your culture, and that can be very, very difficult to fix, especially when you're moving fast and things are changing. And then second, it also relates to performance and how your customers are treated. I always like to say, if you treat your people well, they'll take care of the customer, which will take care of the revenue. And the third, and we touched upon this, is really speed. I think it's very, very important to move fast, not so fast that you get blinded and you don't know where you're going and you get lost, but fast enough that you don't dwell on certain ideas or theories or metrics. You just go ahead, you make mistakes, you have a comfort with failure and getting it wrong, because ultimately you're going to get it right. But things move really, really fast in the world of tech, very fast in the world of startups, and speed is the name of the game. Don't get paralysis by analysis, as a former manager of mine once told me.
Yeah. I think that's very important. Really great advice. Or don't stop just because of any failure.
Exactly.
I think it was a quote I think yesterday. You are not afraid of failure usually. You're afraid of what people think of you when you fail.
Exactly.
Maybe that's often the case and really can block people from going forward.
I love that. I think, we're naturally social beings. And because of that, we're very perceptive to other people's feelings and judgments. And I get that. We're all human. But in the world of success and aspiring to great heights, you really can't worry about what people are going to say or think. You just need to do what is right. And if you follow your principles, whether it's do right by the customer, do right by your team, you're going to find that eventually you will find a lot of success. You can look to the greats like Steve Jobs, for instance, who really didn't care what people thought. He was a trailblazer years, if not decades ahead of his time, and really identified what the market wanted and built a historic company unmatched by any other.
Yes. And talking about principles again, you've mentioned Ray Dalio already.
Yeah.
Maybe a last question. Do you have any additional book recommendations? Something that you would like to share?
As far as books go, there are so many books, but one of the ones that I've been kind of going back to over and over again would be any book really by Malcolm Gladwell, especially Outliers, is a great book. And the reason why is because he really talks about success. In the book, he identifies that, the people that have succeeded have been outliers in different ways. One of the things that he talks about is this idea of 10,000 hours. So If you look at the Beatles, which he talks about in the book, or any kind of group or person or individual that has found tremendous amount of success, they've really practiced the mastery of their craft. They didn't just get good by being born that way or through luck, or, they just woke up and found success. They put in the work and the number of hours that it takes to get really, really good at something. So for those listening, whether you're an AE or a sales leader, or you're thinking about starting your own business, success doesn't come quickly. Success takes hours and hours of dedication, hours and hours of reflection, failing, trying again, reiteration. And that's how you find success. There's different ideas and themes in the book. I won't spoil for those that are wanting to read and haven't read it.
A great summary.
But definitely check out, the works of Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah. And when those people are successful, it rather looks easy. It's maybe just talent, but nobody knows how they got there. Exactly.
Talent is overrated. I think there's this idea of deliberate practice where you look at the greats of the greats, Michael Jordan or Beyonce in the world of music, or, the superstars in sales. They put in a lot of practice and effort, and they make it look easy, but it's never easy. So talent is important, but a lot of it is deliberate work and focused work.
Yes. Thanks for all your insights. I think there are several actionable things people can take value from and use for their own daily business. So, all right, everyone. That brings us to the end of this episode of Speak Revenue. I want to thank our guest, Umair Ahmed, for joining us today and sharing such valuable insights. A huge shout out to all our listeners. Your support means the world to us. Remember to check out our website at speakrevenue.com for a full transcript and additional resources. And if you enjoyed the show, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you go for your listening needs. It really helps get the word out. Also, follow us on LinkedIn and Insta or YouTube. We'll be back soon with another great guest. Until then, stay curious and keep listening.